Hello, and welcome to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rulebook with the YCG podcast. Kyle Oliver,
Justin Bell.
and today we're going to bring you some rulings about Thunder King Rai-Oh.
T-Swizzle the hater.
Yeah, there's lots of aura around him, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Confusing, lots of effects, and you see him all the time, so it's relevant.
Yep, and it's ironic because he's such a game-important monster that he's at 2 now.
Apparently.
For some reason.
I don't think that's why, but he's light.
No, I'm not saying he's important, but I mean, for being so important he's
Important
at
to the
2.
game that he gets hurt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but we're still doing
He controls
this on
an
him.
entire mechanic.
The only one.
Thunder King, what does he do?
Level 4, light, thunder, 1900 attack, 800 defense, if you didn't know that. He's got one effect, a continuous effect. Neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing. And then as other effect, when your opponent special summons a monster, you can send him to the graveyard, this face-up card to the graveyard, to negate that summon of that monster and destroy it.
So the first thing that jumps out at you is this monster has dominion over. He's one of the handful of monsters that has dominion over adding cards to the hand, which is become a pretty major mechanic.
Yeah.
I imagine that when he was made, that wasn't that big. So they're like, oh, we'll just make this monster.
Yeah, it's no big deal to give him the best stats ever and negate monsters. But besides that, rulings wise, first effect, continuous effect. That means as long as he's on the field, that effect applies, unless negated somehow. So the continuous effect, you cannot add cards from your deck to your hand.
As long as he's face up on the field at resolution.
Yeah, it applies. Yeah, as long as he's face up at the resolution of an effect.
So, but the way it's worded is you cannot activate Pot of Duality, and then, you can.
You can't activate anything that breaches that effect. So here's some example cards. We got Reinforcement of the Army, Pot of Duality. Obviously, they both add cards from your deck to your hand. Adds a warrior. This adds one of 3 cards from your deck to your hand. Even though you reveal them, it still adds them from your deck to your hand.
So you can't be activate Rhoda, Chain Book of Moon. Oh,
yeah, because as long as he is on the field at all, you
cannot
can't even
activate.
attempt to do something that is not allowed by
Anyone
the game.
that tells you can activate Pot of Duality and then the stuff goes to the graveyard is no.
No, it's a basic game mechanic where if something is preventing an effect from resolving, you cannot activate that card or that card effect.
Yeah, similarly, Vanity's Fiend says you cannot special summon monsters. Whoa. And then if it says that means you can't attempt to activate anything that would special summon.
Very true.
So you can't attempt to activate either, or similar cards. But you can activate some other cards, say these. We got these 3 right here. This doesn't add from the deck to the hand, so you can play this. This first banishes and then adds to your hand, so you can...
Goes the loop around. And
this
draws.
Just draws, so obviously it bypasses that.
So the obvious difference between Gold Sark and Pot of Duality is that revealing is not an actual zone in the card game. It's just you're looking at cards that are still part of the deck property. But banishing a card, that's an actual zone, and things can happen there.
But so first you remove it from the deck. You're not adding it to your hand from your deck. You just banish it from your deck, and then you proceed to do something later. So this is okay.
Drawing things is obviously okay.
Obviously not adding other than drawing. And then so say if you got Skill Drain, you can still activate these cards. It's not it's continuous and applies even if his effect is negated. So Skill Drain's on the field, you can play these cards.
But you can activate a second effect under Skill Drain.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to that later. So those are the searching things. But say he's not on the field, you got yourself your set Call the Haunted. Thunder King Rai-Oh in the graveyard. I'm not sure if this is upside down, so it might be wrong. There's your deck. Right above your deck. Your opponent plays Reinforcements of the Army. Then you chain Call the Haunted to bring back Thunder King Rai-Oh.
Chain resolves back.
What happens here? So obviously, now that they've activated this, he's on the field when it resolves, but they can't search. So what happens?
It gets sent to the graveyard.
Yeah, so then they still search their deck because they activated it. It resolves. I don't know. See if I got a warrior in here.
Yeah. But since they can't add it to their hand, it goes to the graveyard.
Yeah, they can't add it to their hand, so it goes to the graveyard. Similarly, with some other weird cards, where is that duality? I don't know where it went.
It disappeared.
Whoa, Thunder King made it go away. But so if you duality, you reveal 3 cards. And then they chain, or you've revealed the 3 when the Thunder King's on the field, then you choose one and send it to the graveyard. So that's how that works. That's one's really weird. I always want that to happen. I want a chain to kill their search card.
Me too.
It's great. But moving on to the second effect, the much more confusing one, in my opinion.
The one where, when your opponent would special summon a monster, you can send this face-up card to the graveyard, negate the special summon, and destroy it.
Yeah. So most basic things, like we got some monsters that could get summoned against the Thunder King.
All these are inherent
Xyz,
summons.
Fusion, synchros,
Yeah.
all inherent. In the case of specific fusions, contact fusion is inherent, but fusion by a card is not. And what we mean by inherent is something specific.
If also, well, I mean, we might as well say this now. If a card summons a monster at resolution, you cannot activate Thunder King's effect.
So there's a summon by effect and inherent summons. Inherent summons mean the summon is just what the monster does. So like when I special summon a synchro monster, it is inherently being summoned.
A summon that doesn't start a chain.
When I play Miracle Fusion, it is being summoned by the card effect of Miracle Fusion, which is not inherently the Shining summoning itself. It's
Very
obviously being summoned by another card. So that it's separated into two, effect and inherent. These three are inherent. This is an example of effect. Why can't he negate effects? So it says you can, when a monster is summoned, you send it to the graveyard, negate that summon. So this is how a chain would work. Imagine I summon the Stardust. He can negate Stardust. He's destroyed.
Monster was summoned. Activate Thunder King.
So Stardust was not on the field because Thunder King gets into that limbo position where you attempt to special summon a monster, and then Thunder King can immediately respond to that attempt by sending itself to the graveyard and negating the summon of the monster.
There's
Summon
no
is not
chains.
successful.
Yeah, there's no chains happening at that time. He
Yeah.
can just activate his effect. The last thing that they've tried to do is attempt to summon. But back to the Miracle Fusion. Say I play Miracle Fusion, you've got a Thunder King. That activates as Chain Link 1. If nobody responds to the chain will resolve fully no matter what. You can't interject cards into a chain. So it will resolve. The Shining is officially summoned by the effect. So now that it's summoned, you can't attempt to negate something that's already happened.
The summon is already successful, so you can't negate it.
Yeah.
You can only respond to the summon with another card that does that.
Like Bottomless Trap Hole.
Yeah.
Like, if you were going to punch someone, and it was a Miracle Fusion punch, you would start the punch. The
You're
punch
like,
hasn't
I'm about
happened
to punch you. Do you allow the punch to resolve?
Then,
And then I punch you.
The punching is resolving, and then you're on your way there to punch the person in the face, but the summon is the Shining is summoned while you're on your way to the punch.
Yeah.
And then you finally
He's
finally
confusing.
connect with
I
the
think
punch.
you're making this more confusing.
I am?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's how I do things.
Similar with like Monster Born. Say I got for some reason I got this Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, and I play Monster Born. You say you have no response to Monster Born because Thunder King cannot negate spells. By the way, he can't negate spells or monster effects. It says that. It doesn't say you can on the card.
Very true.
You negate summons. So I activate Monster Born, target Cyber Dragon. And then, so if you say, I do not respond to Monster Born, it will resolve. It will be officially summoned. And now you can no longer negate it because it was already
I
summoned.
guess a more clarifying term would be because he can only respond to the summon of monsters to negate them, and not the effects or spells that summon them. By the time he can negate them, the monster is already summoned.
Yeah,
true.
So he misses the opportunity he would have.
He always misses the opportunity to negate those such cards.
There's some other examples of cards that are really common that are inherent, but not like extra deck monsters. These are not.
Oh.
So Cyber Dragon was always the famous one. You would special him inherently, and he's higher than Thunder King, so you always want to negate unless you have trap cards. So he's inherent. You also got like Dark Arm Dragon. It's inherent. You have 3 special, negate. Also, Light Pulsar and other chaos monsters.
So
Banish.
there is card text now that tells you whether a monster's summon is inherent or an effect. Most monsters that have to discard to special summon or send a monster to the graveyard to special summon are usually going to be inherent effects. Like read Cyber Dragon, what does that say?
It says, if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And there's a couple of hints to whether or not it's inherent. One is there's no semicolons or colons if it is inherent.
It doesn't start a chain.
Yeah, so that means there's no like cost
Condition.
or condition, anything happening. Also, parentheses, where if it tells you where it summons from like that, that's usually a good pointer that it's inherent. So like Light Pulsar, you can summon, and you can special summon him by banishing a light or dark from your graveyard, and it says from your hand, parentheses, no semicolons or colons. And he's also got send from your hand to the graveyard, and then summon from the graveyard in parentheses with no colons. And then moving on, we still got some more examples of effect summons. These are some pretty famous ones. And then we got like Mystic Tomato trying to summon this. For some reason, you hate their Diamond Dude. You attack their Tomato, the effect activates, same as Monster Born. Can't negate monster effects, so it resolves summoning.
Plus, it's in
Diamond
the
Dude.
damage step, so you couldn't you couldn't negate it anyways.
I think you can do damage step. There's not a whole lot of things that just get special in the damage step inherently.
Like nothing.
Like nothing. Yeah, there's nothing that specials inherently in the damage step. So
Yeah.
Also Gorzin's effect. Another key way to know is like if you're playing a game, if they reveal the card in their hand, that means they're activating its effect. So it's like I activate Gorz and they reveal it to you. Mm-hmm. It's not like just like Gorz is on the field now. Like it doesn't activate like
Starts
that.
a chain.
It starts a chain, yeah. So it's like I reveal 3 spellbooks in my hand and the High Priestess to activate her effects.
Do you wish to respond?
Yeah, like you get a chance to respond before it is summoned. So in that case, you can't Thunder King it away. So it just gets specialed,
It's not summoned, so you can't negate it.
which sucks for Thunder King versus spellbooks. Mm-hmm. It's like good and then it's bad.
Yeah.
So none of these can be negated. But moving on to a couple specific cards. Say you got your face-up Skill Drain on the field, and they go, oh, he's got Skill Drain, special Cyber Dragon. But Skill Drain, which I'm sure we'll do a ruling video about later, says their effects are negated, but it doesn't say you can't activate. So you can activate his effect, which sends himself to the graveyard as a cost. So to activate it, you send him to the graveyard, and then he's no longer in the field, so his effect is no longer negated, which means you can negate the summon of the
Dissolves
Cyber
in the
Dragon.
graveyard.
Another example, you got your face-up Macrocosmos with Thunder King, and they go, oh, he's got Macro. I'll summon my Cyber Dragon. Special summon. Now, since his cost is to send to the graveyard, and monsters can't go to the graveyard, he cannot activate his effect. So, you cannot activate the cost of a card that cannot activate an effect where the cost cannot be paid. So,
Absolutely.
like, you can't play Lightning Vortex with no cards in hand. Obviously, you can't discard a card, so you can't play it.
However, well, I guess we will do a rulings video on like cost versus like effects.
Hopefully we'll get there. So you got Macro, you cannot, or Defissure for that matter, you can't send him to the graveyard. Well, you literally cannot send him to the graveyard for his effect, so you cannot activate it. And thus they can special summon a whole bunch of garbage and be a poop dick.
I see people being like, oh, but you can just send it to the graveyard. It just gets removed from play instead. No.
No.
If it's a cost, you can't do it. If it's an effect that does it, then you
It'll
can't.
try to send it.
It'll try to send it,
Yeah.
and then it'll get removed from play.
So something like Solar Recharge, discard a Lightsworn monster to draw 2 cards and mill 2 cards. The discarding is a cost, but it doesn't say that the card needs to go to the graveyard. So you can activate something like Solar Recharge under Macro, and then sending cards to the graveyard. It's telling you that's where they're going to be sent, but that's an effect resolving.
Yeah.
It is not a cost. They do not need to go there. They just have to get out of the deck, essentially.
Yeah, it says, and the wording on Macro is kind of interesting too. It says, like, if a card would be sent, it is sent to somewhere else instead.
Very true.
I guess as a kind of bonus, you can't negate Helios being summoned with Thunder King.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Since
true.
this is another example of
the
like,
same
oh, I'm
thing.
going to try to summon Helios from my deck. Obviously, you can't negate it. It's another effect summoning a monster. And I think that's just about it.
I think so
about it.
too. So if you guys have any comments or feedback on our rulings
Or further questions.
or further questions about Thunder King, definitely leave them in the comments. If you would like other things clarified, you can send them to rulings@ycgpodcast.com or post them under this rulings video.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thanks Kyle, thanks Justin,
And
Bye.
Matt.
and Matt.
The
See
man
ya.
who made it happen.